hoping that finally Toro Y Moi can drop something that's like, oh shit, this is really good. Oh shit, this really wasn't good. So Toro Y Moi, in case you didn't know, is like a synth pop, funk, chillwave, down-tempo artist. You could brand him as many genres. He's quite versatile, I'd say, as an artist. I've said previously that he's dropped some like decent material in the past. Always thought he could, you know, break out and make something great. Unfortunately, this latest album, Outer Space, is not that album. Really had a hard time with this album, and I feel as though this is going to be one of those albums where most people won't have that much of an issue with it, but I'm just like the one person that seems to really dislike almost every element about it. But, you know, if you like this and you're wondering why I'm being negative, that's fine. You just click off the review. I don't really think that, you know, this album is offensive or anything, or it's like terrible, but I do think it's pretty bad. So nearly every track on the album to me has this potential to be so good, but there's like one or two elements that like drag it down completely to the point where I find it almost insufferable. Opening track, Fading, is probably the best example for this, but there are definitely other examples across the album too. But like, it starts off with this really nice beat. I'm sort of grooving along to how good the beat is, actually. And then like 16 seconds in, this squawking fucking bird or something comes through with this. I really can't do the sound. I keep practicing it before I record, and then I do it on the recording and it sounds shit, but you listen to the song, you'll know what I mean. And it just keeps coming through every so often. Like, it's the worst sample he could have possibly picked for this song. The next two tracks aren't too bad at all though. I would say they're my favourites on the album, mostly because they don't really have any of those annoying elements that crop up. They're not really, you know, spectacular or anything, I guess. Maybe they're not supposed to be, but I don't really get that much from them to the point where I would call them great songs, but they're fine. Ordinary Pleasure makes a nice little reference right at the start of the song to Ariel Pink's Round and Round, which is a friggin' great song. Like, I adore that song. I will never get bored of that song. I think it's one of the best songs of the decade, and the opening line of that song is featured as the opening line on this song, so it's a pretty obvious reference, but I guess you wouldn't catch it if you didn't know Round and Round, but if you've never heard that song, go listen to it. And the track after that, which is the one I said I did like as well, makes a little reference to James Murphy, which is interesting because some of these tracks on the album did make me think of like that sort of dance funk groove that you would get on like LCD Soundsystem albums, or anything that you would hear on like a DFA Records album, like a Hot Chip or Holy Ghost or something like that. Feels like a little bit of a reference to Daft Punk on Who Am I, to their song Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, with the tss, tss that keeps popping up. Really reminds me of that era. So Toro Y Moi's got his influences. Definitely at times I'm reminded of Neon Indian. I would much rather be listening to Neon Indian, if I'm being quite honest. But yeah, like the positives I've mentioned, that's like about it. I mean, so much this album, like his vocals are barely present. They feel like they're vibey, and you know it's all part of like the mood and the atmosphere. Doing that soft spoken chillwave voice, which I can never stand usually. I much prefer it when artists kind of like elevate their vocals to a new level, like with the last Neon Indian album, where that was like a huge change of pace for him as an artist, and it just worked out incredibly well. And as funky and as groovy as many of these tracks are, they just don't have enough momentum carrying them because his voice is so spaced out and just chilled out to the point where they're pretty buried. His vocals, I mean, are pretty buried, and it just doesn't really make for enjoyable songs. It's Me is a perfect example of that. You got Habra on here, don't really know much about her as an artist. She takes up pretty much the entire song with very underwhelming vocal performances from her. Again, it's just so like spaced out, vibey. You would find this on like lo-fi chill hip-hop beats on fucking YouTube or whatever they are. Like, it just doesn't sound like a professionally recorded song, and considering Toro Y Moi's been at this for quite some time, I would just expect quite a lot better than this. I mentioned earlier some annoying elements that really take me out of the songs. Freelance with that fucking refrain. Is that supposed to be a refrain? It's really not very satisfying to listen to at all. Again, though, there's this weird sample that pops up every now and when again, where it's like, and it's kind of creative and cartoonish and animated, which I appreciate, but it just doesn't sound very good. And that's the thing as well, a lot of this album does feel quite cartoonish, which I sort of admire for him going for that, but it doesn't work in its favor, especially when you've got like those vibey tracks that sort of drag the momentum out of the grooves, like Monte Carlo, and the closing track 50/50 as well. Oh, I was ready for the album to be over once that track came on. And Monte Carlo, where he's talking about like the Uber driver messing up and it ruins his day and he has to like catch the train instead. What are these lyrics? Did you just like pick a random like office worker from the street and be like, hey, tell me about your day and I'm gonna write a song about it? Well, you know, I was late for work today and I had to catch the train. It was a pretty terrible day. I almost got fired from my job. It's just so pointless, and most of this album feels pretty pointless on the whole as well. Yeah, just not feeling this one. Again, probably one of those releases where most people will be like, yeah, it's fine, it's like a 6 out of 10. But for me, I did not like this at all. Gonna go 4 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts if you did hear it, and yeah, if you haven't heard it, check it out. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. If you do disagree, let me know in the comments or whatever. Have a good day. Goodbye.